Attention bowlers, we are going to get started from Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Welcome to the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. I'm Steve Kelly on the call. This is a Class A&E North doubleheader. Lewis Graffam at John Plante and Bryan Hebert at Jonathan Reid. And we are just getting started here. I'm just giving everyone the thumbs up. Again, my name is Steve Kelly, and I will be your host, narrator, and guide during this Class A&E North doubleheader match today. It is good as always to have you along with us, originally live streamed on Friday, September 27th, 2024, and available for rewatching anytime upon the conclusion of this match. For those interested, I would like to highlight a few things. First, in most cases, the broadcast should have subtitles and live captioning enabled, so if you enjoy this feature, please feel free to enable it in the controls below. If you're watching this broadcast on YouTube, the transcript feature will also likely be available. I'll be describing the play-by-play action and provide up-to-the-minute scoring to the best of my ability. Keep an eye on the unofficial scoreboard on your screen. It is there for the benefit of the broadcast, and the bowlers maintain their own separate official records on their own. So if there's any errors, don't worry. We're going to start out with Jonathan Reid and Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert on the left, Jonathan Reid on the right. I will warm myself up to the correct first and last names here in a little bit. And Jonathan Reid on the right, having some trouble finding the head pin. Bryan Hebert about as much as well. Neither bowler's on the head pin, but Jonathan Reid will clean up for a 10 box to start things out. And Bryan Hebert will finish with a 10 box of his own. So both of our bowlers will begin 10 after 1 here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. 10 after 1 is confirmed. Again, my name is Steve Kelly on the call, calling this A&E Arts and Entertainment Night at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. That's Jonathan Reid to the right of the head pin, and Bryan Hebert on the crossover will connect with a 7 pin and the 7 pin only. Jonathan Reid now will be shooting for a remedial spare shot. He fires, and he'll chop one more out. A little bit off target. Hebert, meanwhile, to the right of the head pin, no mark either. Both our bowlers shooting for 10 boxes here at Lakeside Lanes. Sizable crowd watching here tonight, and it's always great to have spectators, both online and in person. That's Jonathan Reid shooting for the 10 box. He'll get a 9. He won't go for it. He'll get a 9. And Bryan will get an 8. And it is 19 after 2 for Reid and 18 after 2 for Bryan Hebert. Just waiting on the manual scores to be completed down there just to confirm that. Reid 18, Bryan 18. It appeared to be actually 2 8 boxes, so we'll stay in sync with the bowlers. The bowlers have the final say in the scores. That's Jonathan Reid with a strike on the head pin. Bryan Hebert is off to the left on the crossover. So Jonathan Reid will open up with a strike. First mark of the game for our bowlers. Hebert trying to clean up for a spare. He's left with 4 on the deck. The right side accordion, the 4, 5, 9, 10. He's shooting for a 10 box now. Reid is on a strike. Hebert will clean up for a 10 box. 28 after 3 for Bryan Hebert and 28 in the ball for Jonathan Reid. Only one headpin shot so far, and it's Jonathan Reid. I swear I will get that right eventually. Bear with me. Jonathan Reid going for the double, and he drops 9, leaving the 3 on the deck. Hebert chops one out, gets by. Reid doesn't convert for the spare. He'll take a 9 fill. Hebert all the while. Take a few more out for the road. Reid will settle for a 9. And Hebert will take a 4 box after all is said and done. 32 after 4 for Bryan Hebert and 47. Oh, there is a score correction. He had a 9 in the second. It appears I was corrected at the first, so it'll be 47 after 4 for Jonathan Reid after the bowlers fixed it down there. Jonathan Reid on the head pin with a split on the 7 drop. Hebert still hunting for a head pin shot. Reid going for a spare. And he gets by. Hebert will clean up for the spare, though. And Reid will finish with a 7 box. So that should put us at 54 after 5 for Jonathan Reid, and Bryan Hebert is at an open 42 with that spare in the 5th. And that concludes the first half of the first game for our Class E North bowlers. But we're now going to be swapping over to the other 2 bowlers here tonight. It's Graffam and John Plante. John Plante is on the right. Lewis Graffam is on the left. This is the A class of the ACST. And John Plante will start out first with a right side half Worcester. Lewis Graffam will start with a 7 drop on the head pin for a split. John Plante is on the head pin this time, trying to clean up for the spare shot. And neither bowler will complete marks. John Plante shooting for the 10 box on the 4 and the 7 pin. He fires, he'll get it. John Plante will open with a 10 box. Graffam will also take a 10 box to start things out. In case you missed it before, Jonathan Reid has 3 head pin shots in 1 split so far, taking in 9 additional pins and fills. Bryan Hebert still hunting for the head pin and shot, and obviously not hunting for a split, but you know how that goes. John Plante to the right of the head pin on the crossover. 4 horsemen plus a friend. Lewis Graffam will take a shot on the nose for the head pin, dropping 8, 4-7. And John Plante will attempt to convert for the spare, but can't quite do it. Graffam misses just off to the right of the object pins. John Plante will take a 10 box. And Graffam will take a 10 box of his own. And that will put both of our bowlers at 20 after 2. Completely perfect so far, 4 10s apiece. And we're going to be hoping they can get some marks to match the E-class here today. That's Jonathan Reid on the head pin, dropping 8, leaving the 5 and the 9. Jonathan Plante. Too many Johns here tonight. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, that's going to be the bane of my pronunciation tonight. So Jonathan Plante, I swear I will promise not to mess that up too many more times today. Jonathan Plante will take a spare. How about we'll stick with John for now. John will go for a spare. Lewis Graffam on the 1, 8, 10. Takes out the 8, leaves the 1 and the 10 on the deck. I should put that spare in the correct spot. But he'll clean up for a 10 box. Triple X, 30 after 3. John Plante also 30 after 3, but he's on a fill. Lewis Graffam 3 for 3 on the head pin. John Plante, no head pin shots, but he has a mark. John Plante will connect with a head pin that time. He'll take a 7. It's on the fill with a split. Lewis Graffam will take a half Worcester plus a friend. John Plante, 5, 8, 10. He'll fire on the 5, 8. It was the right idea, but he can't kick over to the 10. No spare for John Plante. Lewis Graffam for a pretty one. He almost converts the not quite half Worcester remains, leaving the 7 and the 8. John Plante will clean up for a 10. Graffam. It's 47 after 4 for John Plante. That is confirmed. Graffam currently perfect. 30 after 3 with 3 10s. He fires. And he'll break his 10 streak. He'll take a 9 with that 7-pin shot. 39 after 4. That's where we'll sit. After 4. That's Jonathan Plante on the right side. He fires on the head pin, drops 8. sleeper pins. Sleeper pin behind the 3. Lose Graffam on the head pin, but takes a rather interesting, difficult split. Jonathan Plante gets by, misses the spare. Graffam versus the 7-10-5-9. Plays the wood, and the wood... Is the wood going to take nothing? The wood will take a trip and actually return to its original position, almost not even do anything, but John Plante will take a 10 box. 4 10s in 1/2. That puts Jonathan Plante at 57 after 5. And Graffam will finish with a 9 box at 48 after 5. 48 after 5 and 57 after 5. That is confirmed. We're going to return to the E-class of our doubleheader feature tonight. And again, I'll remind you, it is Jonathan Reid and Bryan Hebert. We have 2 Johns tonight. We have Jonathan Reid and Jonathan Plante. I'm sure there will be several more times where I will somehow get those first and last names crisscrossed all over the place, so do forgive me for that. Bryan Hebert will lead off. He's on a spare. On the head pin, and he'll drop 10. There's a strike for Bryan Hebert on the nose. Jonathan Reid on the head pin as well, but he'll get a split. It's Jonathan Reid versus the 5-10-9. Bryan Hebert with a statement strike. But that will be a mark for Jonathan Reid not to be outdone too much. So Hebert currently is at 62 open in the 6th with that strike on spare. Hebert is off to the left of the head pin, 2 so far. Jonathan Reid almost taking a revenge strike, but he'll fill with 9. Hebert will clean up for a 9 fill on that strike, putting him at 71 in the 6th. Jonathan Reid, though, still working on marks of his own, will pile a spare on top of another spare. Bryan Hebert's playing for a 10 box with just the 10 pin remaining after that 9 fill on the strike. He'll take 9. And can you believe this is the E-class, folks? We have a very competitive and high-scoring match here in the 7th. Jonathan Reid, double spare, 83 and a fill. Hebert at 80. And we're not even done yet, so stay tuned here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. This is Class E, folks. And that's Bryan Hebert to the right, dropping 5 off at the outset with the 4 horsemen left side and the sleeper. Jonathan Reid on the nose on the head pin, filling the spare with 8. Hebert for a spare attempt, just slightly off to the right of the head pin. Jonathan Reid is on the 6-10 for a spare. Could be a 3rd spare in a row. There's a lot of wood in front of it. It might be easy, and it is easy. He'll take a spare. Hebert trying to run down the 4 horsemen left side. He'll take a 7. Reid is at 101 in 8. Hebert 87 in 8. And to size up the superlatives, Jonathan Reid is currently a 6 for 8 headpin shots with 2 splits. Hebert 1 headpin shot, 0 splits. Splits are measured based on a headpin shot, and will Hebert get another strike? He's on the headpin on the nose, and he'll drop everything to the 5 pin. Reid on his spare fill, another spare fill. I'm saying that a lot, but we like to see that. He'll take 5. Just off to the head, just off the head pin a little bit. Hebert will not get another spare. Reid, and the spare train ends there. So Hebert will take a 9. Puts him at 96 after 9. Jonathan Reid, 6 box through 10 box possibility. He'll take 7. 113 is where Jonathan Reid is after 9. Hebert is at 96 after 9. In this first game of 5, 1 box to go before we switch back to Class A here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Great to have you along. This is Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. And Bryan Hebert's just off to the right of the head pin. Jonathan Reid on the head pin drops 9. Hebert for a spare shot. And he's a little bit too much on the nose, leaving 3 pins on the deck, the 2, 4, 7. Jonathan Reid versus the 5-pin. He'll miss it, actually. He'll play the wood to the left of the 5. Slightly off target. Hebert for a 10 box. He'll take 9. The 7-pin is unharmed. That will put Hebert at 105 and 10. Reid, meanwhile, will take the first game with 122. Reid with a 4-mark 122. Hebert with a 2-mark 105. High-powered matches here in Class E. Oddly enough, putting some interesting peer pressure on Class A to perform just as good, if not better. Class E really showing Class A how it's done, but we'll see the thrilling conclusion here. Lewis Graffam and John Plante. Lewis Graffam's on the right lane this time, on lane 24. John Plante is on the left. Lewis Graffam will lead off. And Lewis Graffam having a bit of a tough time on the head pin. John Plante as well. Both bowlers have interesting piles of pins to contend with here. Graffam will try first. He'll leave the 5-pin with no mark. John Plante, meanwhile, trying to convert the center bouquet, and he won't. Neither bowler will. They're both shooting for 10 boxes. Graffam with a 9-box minimum. He fires on the head pin, on the king pin. He'll take a 10 box. Plante will take a 9. So Plante is at 66 and 6, and Graffam is at 58 and 6. And that is confirmed on the scoreboard down there. And the 105 and 122 in the E-class is also confirmed. Graffam will lead off on the head pin, dropping 9 leaving the 6-pin. Plante is to the left of the head pin, but it'll get some backdoor action. Graffam on a 6-pin, single-pin spare with wood. Lumberyard down there. He'll take it for a spare. Graffam's at 68 in a ball. John Plante. Lane 23, a little bit too much on the nose. The 2 and the 3 pins are left on the deck. No mark. Plante will actually take both the 2 and the 3 out for a really pretty 10 box. And that puts Graffam at 68 in a ball in the 7th, and Plante at 76 after 7. And currently, Lewis Graffam is 5 for 7 on the head pin with 2 splits. John Plante is 2 for 7 on the head pin with 1 split, and Lewis Graffam will fill that spare with 8, another head pin shot, no split. John Plante misses the head pin, but drops 8. So Graffam, the 1 and the 8 pins on the deck. Or excuse me, the 6 and the 10 pins on the deck. John Plante has the 1 and the 8 pin on the deck. No spare for Graffam. And Plante will take the back row and leave the front row. 6-10 10-box opportunity for Graffam. He'll leave the 6 and the 10 for an 8. John Plante will take 10. I hope you're enjoying this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match. I'm Steve Kelly on the call. It's great to have you along. That's Lewis Graffam and John Plante down there in this Class A action here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. That's Lewis Graffam on the head pin with a split, the spread eagle. It's a head pin shot and a split. And John Plante still having some trouble finding the head pin today. He's been rather low numbers on the head pin, and I remember folks were telling me about how good he is on the head pin, and that's been rather difficult. Lewis Graffam will miss the spare. Meanwhile, John Plante for his spare, he'll miss it as well. Oh, it's down here. It's kind of like, yeah, this is kind of like the ugly view that you don't see on the stream. I got kind of the more clean one on the stream. So Lewis Graffam will take an 8-box, and John Plante will also take an 8-box. Size up the situation for the head pins. Lewis Graffam is 6 for 9 on the head pin with 3 splits. John Plante is 2 for 9 on the head pin with 1 split. Lewis Graffam will lead off first. He's on the head pin. Another spread eagle. Yet another eagle. I'm told they're endangered, but we're seeing a lot of them here at Lakeside Lanes, and John Plante will punch out to left of the head pin once again, left side half Worcester, 2-drop. Graffam for the spread eagle conversion for a spare. He just takes out more of the bird on the street. Left side half Worcester for John Plante. He's on the nose there, but he leaves the 5 and the 9. 5-9 to service. Graffam for a 6 through 10 box. He'll take 7. John Plante will take a 10. Good way to pin it out. That will be the conclusion of the first game. And wouldn't you believe it, Class E outclassed Class A in this first game. 99 for Louis Graffam and 104 for John Plante versus Jonathan Reid's 122 and Bryan Hebert's 105. It's Class E, folks. And we also have Class A also trying to keep up. And anyways, that will be the conclusion of the first game. That is confirmed on the electronic scoreboard that we are in sync. And we're going to move on to the second game here. It's Bryan Hebert and Jonathan Reid once again. To catch you up, Jonathan Reid was 7 for 10 on the head pin with 2 splits. Bryan Hebert only 2 for 10 on the head pin with 0 splits. But there seems to be a lot of great backdoor and cleanup action going on to salvage those lack of head pin shots for Bryan Hebert at least, and that strike on spare he got in the first game really kind of bailed him out of a potentially sticky situation. But anyways, enough of that. Let's talk about Jonathan Reid leading off on lane 24, Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Jonathan Reid with a bit of a wild pitch to the right. That's a shot on the 10 pin and the 10 pin only. Hebert is slightly to the left of the head pin, but gets a generous 6-drop. Reid with a remedial second ball. He's just got to get a bunch of pins if he can handle it, but he'll swing wide left this time and take only 2 more out. Hebert for his spare shot. He's just a little bit too full on the nose, leaving the 3 and the 6. Jonathan Reid now is working on what appears to be a 4-box or higher. 3-box or higher, excuse me. And he'll settle for a 7. Hebert will take 9. In terms of fills tonight, Reid has totaled 31, averaging 7.8 per mark. Hebert has 19 total pins out of fills, averaging 9.5 per mark. Reid is on the nose and takes a split with an 8-drop. Hebert's on the nose and leaves all but the 4. Headpin shots for both of our bowlers. That first ball, the first pitch of the second box of the second game of 5. This Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour doubleheader match on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook and later on YouTube on Candlepin Bowling Network. Candlepin Bowling Network, the place to watch the bowlers. Check it out. Plenty of matches of all classes and all skill levels in the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Class A and E is a nice diverse range, so kind of demonstrates you can go all the way up to pro tier and you can come all the way down to, I don't say down to, but there's so many bowlers in the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour now that we have just that many classes, and it's just one of those things where we have a lot of interest in a lot of bowlers, and that's really great to keep the conversation going in the Candlepin bowling world. So, anyways, we just paused real briefly for just a pin check. If a pin is too far out on the deck, it's always prudent to check if it's in front of or behind the legal line. Jonathan Reid will take a 10 box. And so will... No, Bryan Hebert will not take it. Excuse me. I thought he had it, and I looked away for a second. So Reid will take a 10, and Hebert will take a 9. I can get my story straight here. Hebert is at 18 after 2, and Reid is at 17 after 2. Switch the scores here. There we go. And neither bowler on the head pin there. Bryan has an 8-drop, and Reid has a 6-drop on the 4-horseman right side. Reid attempts to run down the right side 4-horseman, leaves the 10 pin. Bryan Hebert's on the 1 and the 10. He'll fire on the 1 and the 10. He'll miss just a little bit. Here, I'll zoom in just so you can see that. Sorry, didn't get that on the second ball. Reid for the 10 pin. He'll get a 10 box. Hebert on the 1 and the 10. He will... Will that pin go? Oh my goodness, it won't. So Reid will take 10. Hebert will take 9. Reid has 2 10s. Hebert has 3 9s. Both are 27 after 3. They took 2 different roads to get there, but they're both neck and neck right now. Reid with a slight advantage in fills, 31 to Hebert's 19. Reid is on the head pin, drops 9. Hebert's first pitch is a little bit wild to the right of the head pin. Reid's looking at a single pin spare opportunity on the 5 pin, the king pin, as it's called. Reid will get by to the left. Hebert will fire to the right and sail through the void, and the void stares back. So both bowlers are now shooting for 10 boxes here. Jonathan Reid will take 9, and Hebert will clean up 4-9. Both bowlers, surprisingly, will take the same box. 36 after 4 for Reid, 36 after 4 for Hebert. Both of our bowlers are in a dead heat, taking differing paths, but they're still generally getting there. Anyways, so this is our matchup tonight. It is actually Hebert at Reid. I put the thumbnails and the names in the wrong place. Class A North for, we'll talk about that in a bit. Sometimes you stall and don't have enough time. That's a head pin shot for Reid and a split. It's sort of a spread eagle, but there's a sleeper pin in the back. Hebert's not on the nose, but he takes a decent drop of 6. Reid on the eagle plus a pin. He'll take out everything but the 2-4-7. Hebert versus the 1-3-6-9. He'll just miss the head pin by a hair. By a hair, I mean an inch or 2. Reid is shooting for a 10 box, 7, 8, 9, or 10. Possibility, and he'll take a nice, pretty slow-moving 10. Hebert will conclude with a 9. 5 9s for Bryan Hebert. 5 9s a service. 45 after 5 for Hebert. And 46 after 5 for Jonathan Reid. That's all we have to say about the E-Class for the first half of the second game. We're going to say hello to Class A again. That's Jonathan Plante on the right and Louis Graffam on the left. Jonathan Plante is going to lead off on the head pin. He's found the head pin this time. He'll drop 8. And Louis Graffam hits a little bit too hard on the nose with a split on the head pin. Plante dropped everything but the 2 and the 4. Graffam dropped everything but the 2, the 3, the 6, and the 10. Plante fires. Plante reaches his target for a spare. Graffam will nearly take a spare. He'll leave the 3 for a 10-box opportunity. Graffam is 8 for 11 tonight on head pins. And the wood will deflect the ball. He'll take a 9-box. Again, Graffam is 8 for 11 on head pins, while Plante is 3 for 11 on head pins. 5 splits for Graffam, 1 split for Plante. Totaling 8 in fills for Graffam and 7 in fills for Plante. Still early, but we'll see where that takes us. We'll start out with John Plante to the right on lane 24, to the right of the head pin. And that will be a 3 fill by the looks of it. Graffam's on the nose, pin still falling. Dropping 7. Plante, after that 3 fill, he punches out to the left, leaving the 1, the 4, the 6, the 7, and the 10. Graffam will clean up for a spare. Plante, meanwhile, this shot is orange pin, head pin, 1, 4, 6, 7, 10, and he'll play the orange pin, take out everything but the 4 pin for a really well thought out cleanup for a 9-box. It's a good out. And so currently our A-Class bowlers are still working on getting things started, while Class E started out rather hot. We'll see if the pace maintains. John Plante is to the right of the head pin. He gets by. He takes a few more out. Graffam on a spare, meanwhile. He fires. On the nose, drops 6, the left side diamond. Sizable crowd forming around our bowlers here off screen. To the left of the head pin, Plante will get the same shot on the second ball as the previous box, the 1, 4, 6, 7, 10. Graffam will play the diamond, and he'll get it. Second spare in a row for Graffam, 35 after 3. Plante is working on a 5 through 10 box. We'll chop one out, leaving the 4, 6, 7, 10 for a 6 box. It's going to hurt Plante a little bit. He's at 28 after 3. Plante 3 for 13 on headpins tonight with 1 split. Graffam at 9 for 13 on the headpin with 5 splits. Graffam has a slight edge in the fills, 14 total, but averaging less than John Plante, who's averaging 5. And Plante off to missing the headpin, and Graffam filling with 9 on the headpin. No spare for Plante, 137. Graffam won't get another spare. Spare streak ends here. Plante, meanwhile, will take 7. Graffam will get a 9 box. 53 after 4 for Graffam, 35 after 4 for Plante. With 1 to go before our bowlers sit and we switch back to the E class. This is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, Class A&E. Some arts and entertainment at Lakeside Lanes tonight. And just Jonathan Plante with a strike on the nose. It was a slow-moving strike, but still went regardless. Graffam on the nose, leaving the 2 and the 10. Graffam with the 2 and the 10, a piece of wood in between the 2 and the 10. So if you're looking at it from the top, it's like a % sign. Graffam plays the 2, but he plays it a little bit too light and kicks it to the right too early, leaving the 10 pin. No mark for Graffam. Plante had a strike. Graffam thinking long and hard about this shot. Waiting for the wood to settle. Still kind of figuring things out. It is in the rule book. You have to wait for the wood to settle, or reasonably settle at least. And Graffam will take a 10. And that's the end of the half. So your score update is Graffam is at 63 after 5. Plante is at 45 and a fill after 5. That's the A class. And the E class, Jonathan Reid's at 46 after 5. Hebert is at 45 after 5. Neither bowlers are on marks right now. Saying hello to Jonathan Reid and Bryan Hebert once again. Reid is 10 for 15 on headpins with 4 splits. Hebert is 3 for 15 on headpins with 0 splits. Reid 31 in fills, 19 in fills for Hebert, and Hebert will miss fire on the first ball. And Reid is on the nose. He'll drop 9, leaving the 10 pin. Hebert took the 7 and the 7 only on the first ball. Second ball, he drops everything but the 1, the 2, and the 4. Jonathan Plante and Bryan Hebert are having trouble finding the headpin tonight, it seems, across the 2 classes. No spare for Reid. Hebert will clean up for a 10. And Reid will take 9. That puts Reid at 55 after 6, and putting Hebert at 55 after 6. Makes my job easy when both bowlers are tied. Hebert, he fires to the right of the headpin, dropping 7, the 1, 2, 4. And Reid is on the nose, drops 8, 3, 10. That is technically a split. Hebert on the 1, 2, 4. Run him down. And he just misses to the right of the headpin. Sails into the void. Jonathan Reid versus the 310. Spare bid. Spare leave. Lumberyard around the 3 and the 10. He'll take the 3, and oddly enough, the 10 will remain unharmed. Hebert's firing for a 10 box. And he'll hit a little bit too full on the headpin for an 8 box. And Reid will take a 10 box. Reid at 65. And Hebert at 63 at the end of the 7th. Reid 12 for 17 on the headpin. Hebert 3 for 17 on the headpin. Here's a headpin shot by Bryan Hebert, 8 drop. 5 and the 9. And Reid to the right of the headpin So right side half Worcester. Hebert gets by just slightly, no mark. And Reid's just a little bit too full on the head pin for the spare shot. Hebert for a 10 box on the 5 pin. He'll take it for a 10 to clean up. And Reid, meanwhile, will clean up for a 9 box. Both bowlers still hunting for marks. That puts Reid at 74 after 8 and Hebert at 73 after 8. 1 pin difference between our two bowlers in this game. Hebert is down in the total by 18, but up in the game by 1. And he's on the head pin that time. He'll drop 6. Reid's answer is on the nose. He'll drop 8. It's been great on those head pin shots so far. Hebert will fire, and he'll miss slightly to the right. So there's no mark for Hebert there. Reid will take a mark, though, his first mark off this game. And Hebert will take a 10. It's possible that may have turned the tide of the match, but Reid is at 84 in a ball in 9, and Hebert is at 83 closed in 9. A mark really is what separates our bowlers right now. That's Hebert on the head pin, dropping 8. Great first ball. And it's not a split either. Reid is on an... Ooh. He was on a mark, and he misfired a little bit to the right and took a 2-fill. So Hebert is on the 5-7. Oops. Sorry about that. It was a spare. Sorry, I switched to the wrong view. That was entirely on me. But Hebert will take a spare. Reid punches out a few more. And we may have just witnessed the lead getting tossed back and forth here. We'll see where that takes us, but Jonathan Reid is looking at a 5-box or greater. And he'll play the center, and he'll take a 10. Reid will finish with 96. Hebert is at 93 in a ball. That mark may have saved him. And in the total, Bryan Hebert is down by 20. So a good fill will really put him in good positioning, but that will be enough to take... He took a 4 fill after all said and done. He wins the second game by 1, 97 to 96. That will be it for the second game for our E class. Reid at 96, Hebert at 97. Hebert just barely stealing the win with that 4-pin fill on the final box, the final box on that spare for 97 to Reid's 96. Reid had a very unlucky final box. Meanwhile, Hebert picked up the pace and salvaged it. Graffam currently at 63. Plante at 45 and a fill. Graffam on a head pin shot with a split. An ugly split, like a spread eagle adjacent. Oops. My apologies on the switching duties today. I'm not doing so good at that. Graffam, no mark, and Plante will take a 6 fill after all said and done. Graffam will take a 10. Plante will take a 9. So Graffam is at 73 after 6, and Plante is at 60 after 6. So score update. Graffam 12 for 16 on the head pin with 6 splits. Plante 4 for 16 on the head pin with 1 split. Graffam will fire on the nose and take a banana split. And Plante is on the head pin, but will drop 7 with a split. Graffam will go first, the 4, 6, 7, 10. And he's a little bit off target, takes the 7-pin out and the 7-pin only. Plante versus the 5, 9, 7. And he'll play the 5, 9, leaving the 7. No marks for either of our bowlers. And that may be a foul. I'll wait to see what is stated. Most likely a foul. Is a 10 box for Plante. I think that's going to be a 7 box for Graffam. I will hold for confirmation. It looks like that's where it's heading, though. Graffam does indeed foul the 7 for 80 and 7. And Plante is at 70 and 7. That's the state of things. Graffam fires to the left of the head pin. And Plante is on the nose, dropping 7. Graffam after a rough first ball. Second ball, he overcorrects a little bit, leaving the 1 and the 2, no mark. Plante is on the 4-5-2. Plante will spare it up. Graffam will clean up for a 10 box. Graffam is 13 for 18 on head pins with 7 splits, totaling 23 in fills, averaging 7.7 per mark. Plante is 6 for 18 on the head pin with 2 splits, totaling 16 in fills, averaging 4 per fill. And that's Louis Graffam dropping 9 on the head pin. Plante is on a spare fill. Plante is on the nose. Almost a little bit too on the nose, but he'll take an 8 fill at least, 7-10 split. Graffam will miss his spare. That could be big by this point. Plante has a 7-10 split with wood. And he'll play the wood for a spare. Graffam will take a 10. That puts Graffam at 109, and Plante is at 98 and a fill in the 9th here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. It's great to have you along with us. I'm Steve Kelly on the call. It's Louis Graffam. He's off target at the left of the head pin. John Plante on the head pin, 6 fill with a split. Graffam tries to clean up. He almost does, leaving the 10 pin. Plante versus the 2, 4, 6, 10. He'll play the object pin, but won't get it. Graffam will take a 9 with that foul. Plante will take 10. 109 for Graffam and 114 for John Plante. That is confirmed. 2-game total of 208 for Graffam. 2-game total of 218 for Plante, up by 10. And then in the E-class, Jonathan Reid, 2-game total of 218, up by 16 over Bryan Hebert's 2-game total of 202. So we're going to move to the 3rd game, and we're going to say hello once again to our Class E bowlers. Say hello to our Class E bowlers, Jonathan Reid and Bryan Hebert, once more on lanes 23 and 24 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. There's 2 leagues tonight. From what I just heard with an earshot of me, then they're starting to come in to bowl their leagues. Lakeside Lanes gets quite busy, especially in the fall. Jonathan Reid will lead off on lane 24. He's on the nose, dropping 7. Hebert gets by to the left of the head pin. He drops 7. Reid's got the 3-9-10. Hebert's got the 1-2-8. And Reid will take a spare. And Hebert will not quite take a spare. He'll leave the 1 and the 8. Hebert will miss for a 9. That's 10 and a ball for Reid and 9 for Hebert. Appreciate you watching this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Class A and E doubleheader tonight. Wherever it is you're watching, however it is you're watching, whether it be in 2024 or 3024, it doesn't matter to me. That's an 8 fill for Jonathan Reid. Not on the nose, but a great generous drop. Hebert on the head pin with an ugly 7 drop for a split. With the 5-6-10, Reid will sail through the void. Hebert on the 5-6-10. Hebert's a little bit too full on that 5 pin and the wood. Reid is shooting at the 1 and the 10 pin. And he'll miss for an 8 box. And Hebert will also take an 8 box. Jonathan Reid is 14 for 22 on the head pin with 6 splits, totaling 41 in fills, averaging 6.8. Bryan Hebert is 7 for 22 on the head pin with 1 split, taking in 23 pins for fills and averaging 7.7 per fill. And that's Jonathan Reid on the head pin drop, leaving all but the 2. Bryan's off to the right of the head pin. Jonathan Reid versus the 2 pin with plenty of wood around it. He'll take it for a spare. It's his second spare of the game. Hebert with a misfire to the right. Hebert for a remedial third ball. He'll take 6. That puts Hebert at 23 after 3 and Reid at 36 in the ball after 3. And currently... No, we'll talk about that later. We just talked about head pins and splits. Probably had enough of that for a few boxes. We'll check in on that later on. That is Reid off the head pin, dropping 6 though for the fill. Hebert, similar story. Both of our bowlers with an interesting mix. Hebert, the 178, Reid, 1389. And Reid will miss a second spare in a row opportunity. Hebert misses the head pin, takes out everything but the head pin. Reid's looking at a 7 box or greater. Reid fires. He'll take the 3 pin out, leave for an 8 box. Hebert for a 9 or a 10, he'll take a 10. That puts Hebert at 33 after 4, and Reid at 50 after 4. That is confirmed. Jonathan Reid will lead off on lane 24, Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. And he's to the right of the head pin with a half Worcester. Hebert drops 6. Both bowlers off the head, not on the head pin. Reid will try first. He's got a half Worcester conversion. Took out the 3 and the 9. Connects to the left of the head pin. He's going to leave the 1 and the 10. Hebert on the 1, 3, 6, 8. He's just off to the left of the head pin and can't quite reach his target. Seems to be the theme of the night so far for Bryan. And Reid will clean up for a 10. Hebert will take 7. And at the end of all of that, that's the end of the first half of the third game. Reid is at 60 after 6. Hebert is at 40 after 5. Excuse me. Reid is at 60 after 5. Hebert is at 40 after 5. That is your score update for Class E at the halfway point. Game 3 of 5. With 1 half to go for them. But we're going to say hello to Class A once again. Lewis Graffam and Jonathan Plante. Jonathan Plante will start first on lane 24, and he's on the head pin. Reaches his target, gets a split. Graffam. Well, wow, he'll just take out only the 3 pin. Plante is on the 2 and the 10. Or it might be the 4 and the 10, actually, excuse me. Doesn't matter, he'll spare it up. As he plays the wood. Graffam is a little bit too full on his second ball. Now he's looking at the 4, 6, 2, 7, 9, 10. It's like a bit of a italicized bastardization of the eagle, and he'll finish with a 6 box. Lewis Graffam 14 for 21 on head pins with 7 splits. John Plante 9 for 21 on the head pin and 5 splits. Plante has a better fill total than Lewis Graffam with 30, and that's an 8 fill, 9 fill for Plante on the head pin. Graffam's just off the head pin. So John Plante versus the 5 pin. Will he get a second mark in a row? Let's find out. He will. John Plante is finally finding the center of the lane. Graffam tries to run down the right side 4 horsemen, and he leaves the 10 pin wiggling. It's a valiant attempt. All pins were touched. Graffam will take a 9 box for 15 after 2. John Plante on lane 24 fires to the right of the head pin. Take a 7 fill, though. Graffam is on the head pin. He drops 8. Could be 9. 6 pin doesn't go. It is an 8 drop. Plante on the 1-7-8. He'll miss the target. No mark. Graffam will take a spare, though. The 3-6 fall. Plante versus the 1-7-8 for a 10 box. And he will. He'll miss the second and get the third. You know the rest of the lyrics. That's 46 after 3 for Plante. 25 in a ball after 3 for Graffam. Graffam 15 for 23 on headpins. Plante is 10 for 23 on headpins. A headpin shot is a yes or no value on whether or not they connect with the headpin on the first ball of a box. For example, that was not a headpin shot for John Plante. Lewis Graffam, similar story, but he drops 8, fills with 8. Plante left half of the deck left. And he misses the headpin, but he'll take it anyway for a spare, his third spare in 4 boxes. And Graffam will not be outdone. He'll get a spare of his own. 43 in a ball for Graffam, 56 in a ball for Plante. That is confirmed on the electronic scoreboard out of view here. Plante fires first. He's just off the head pin, drops 6. Graffam is on the head pin, and he'll drop 6 as well. A tale of 2 different shots with the same result in the end, but John Plante will run down the 4 horsemen for a spare. Graffam, meanwhile, he's just off target, but the wood almost comes back generously. He's left with the 2 and the 4. Graffam will take 10. Where does that leave us? That leaves us with Graffam at 59 and 5, and Plante is at 72 and a ball in 5. I'm just awaiting the score update, and it has been updated officially, so that's official. 72 and a ball for Plante, 59 closed for Graffam. Midway through the third game here, Jonathan Reid 60 and 5, Hebert 40 and 5. That's your score update, folks. Great to have you along. We're going to say hello to Class E one more time for this third game of 5. It's going to be Bryan Hebert on the right and Jonathan Reid on the left. Bryan Hebert is 7 for 25 on headpins with 1 split tonight. Reid is 15 for 25 on headpins with 6 splits tonight. Hebert misses the headpin, drops 6. And Reid, wild pitch to the left. Hebert is shooting for a spare on the 1-2-9-10. And he'll get it. Hebert will get a nice ball on the headpin, caressing it down for a spare. Reid is on a remedial second ball, and he's on the nose this time, and will everything go? The 5 pin is the only one that doesn't go. Hebert thought he had it. He was even starting to walk towards the reset button, thinking he had it, but that's Candlepin for you. Sometimes one pesky pin doesn't go, and often I find it's the 5 pin, the king pin. Jonathan Reid will take a 10 box after a slight delay in the pin's decision to go down. Reid's at 70 and 6. Hebert at 50 and a ball after 6. That is confirmed. Hebert up next on the fill. He's to the right of the headpin, but he drops 6. We now have Jonathan Reid on lane 23. He's on the nose with an 8 drop. Hebert on the 1-2-5-8. Misses to the right. Jonathan Reid on the 3-6. And he gets by. No mark for either bowler. Hebert on the 1-2-5-8. He'll connect with the 2-5-8, leaving the 1 for a 9 box. Reid's looking at an 8 box or higher. Reid will take 10. Puts Reid at 80 in 7. Hebert's at 65 in 7. Currently in totals, Jonathan Reid is up in the total by 31 and up in the game by 15. Bryan Hebert's on the nose, and he'll take a strike, a fast-moving strike. That was the ball he was looking for. Reid is slightly to the right of the head pin. Pin's still falling out, drop 6, 1, 7, 8, 9. That's what he's looking at. 1, 7, 8, 9. Your winning lottery numbers for the evening. Reid, he plays the nose on the lumber yard, and he'll take a spare. I said a spare. Thank you. 90 and a ball for Reid, 75 and a fill for Hebert. At the 8th frame, incomplete. As Louis Graffam very generously kicks a piece of wood back to the planet it came from. So Hebert is 8 for 28 on the head pin tonight. He's totaled 29 in fills. Reid has totaled 47 in fills with 16 for 28 head pin shots. Hebert will fire first on a strike fill, 5 so far, not on the head pin. Reid to the right of the head pin. He'll take 5. Classic staple of jazz music. Hebert will take everything out but the 1 and the 9, so that will be an 8 fill on a strike. For 83 and 8. Reid will miss his target and not get the spare. He's left with the 1 and the 10. No mark for either bowler. And Hebert will settle for 9. And Reid on the 1 and the 10. Take 1, leave 10 for a 9 box. It's 104 for Reid and 92 for Hebert. That is confirmed. Hebert fires on lane 24. He's to the right of the head pin. Pins are still figuring things out. It's going to be a 5 drop. 1, 2, 6, 8, 10. Jonathan Reid on the nose. Drops 8. And Hebert tries to clean up for a spare. He leaves the 1 and the 10. Reid is looking at the 2 and the 7 for a spare shot. Reid misses. Hebert's waiting on a piece of wood to settle. And Hebert will miss to the left for an 8 box for a 100. So Reid will take the third game. Reid will finish with a 10 box for 114. And that will do it for the third game. Reid 114 for a 3-game total of 332, averaging over 100. Hebert also averaging over 100 for a 3-game total of 302 with that 100. Currently, Reid has 4 points and has 30 over Bryan Hebert in the total. That's where we sit for Class E at the moment. But we're going to move back to Class A now. Louis Graffam, John Plante. Louis Graffam will drop 8. He's not on the head pin, but he'll leave the 1 and the 2. Plante on a fill for a spare. And he'll take 2. Half Worcester left side. Graffam on the 1 and the 2. He'll take it for a spare. Plante, meanwhile, for a rough half Worcester conversion he's working on. He's a little too full, leaving the 4, 6, 10. No mark. Plante had a perfect first half, 4 spares and 110. Plante will sail through for a 7 box for 81 and 6. Graffam is 16 for 26 on the head pin tonight with 7 splits. Plante is 10 for 26 for the night with 5 splits. Plante is doing better on fills, taking in 54, averaging 6. And Graffam will start out with a high-low jack split, 7 drop, 7 fill. Plante just gets a few off to the right of the head pin. Graffam will miss the high-low jack. Plante is working on a pile of pins. And he almost gets them all. He leaves the 4-pin wiggling. Graffam is on a high-low jack, 1, 7, 10. Graffam will take 7. 7 fill, 7 box. Plante will take a 10 box. That should put... Oops. There we go. That should put Graffam at 83. And Plante at 91. That is confirmed. Lewis Graffam will lead off on lane 24. The Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. He drops 8. And Plante, he's on the headpin. He also drops 8, leaving the 410. It's going to be split city for both our bowlers. Graffam with the easier one on the 310. And he'll get a spare. John Plante, his turn on the 4 and the 10. He'll play the wood, and he'll also get a spare. Both bowlers with spares on split conversions. 93 after 8 for Graffam, and 101 and a ball for Plante. Graffam's on a fill as well. Tight match in the A class. Plante is up in the total by 18 and up in the game by 8. Graffam will fire first to the right of the head pin with a 5 fill, 4 horseman right side of the 9 pin. And Plante, also missing the head pin, will take 5 as well. 4 horseman right side in the 7. And Graffam will play the horseman, and he'll wiggle the sleeper. Calls an audible, 9 pin wiggling. Plante on the 4 horseman right side in the 7 pin. He misses his target, leaves the 1 in the 7. No mark. Graffam will take 9. Plante will take 8. That puts Graffam at 107 and 9 and Plante at 114 and 9. Currently, John Plante has 59 in fills, averaging 5.9 per fill. And Graffam has 49 in fills, averaging 7 per fill. Graffam on the head pin, dropping 7, 5, 9, 10. That's a split. Plante is to the left of the head pin, dropping, wood still settling. It's dropping 6. Graffam's up first on the 5, 9, 10. And he'll take the 5 and the 9 and leave the 10. No mark. Plante versus the 1, 6, 9, 10 on lane 23 in Manchester, New Hampshire, Lakeside Lanes. And Plante will strategically take a spare. Graffam will take 9. With 1 ball to go, Graffam's at 116 and in 10. That's concluded. Plante will take the third game, 124 and a ball. We'll see what Plante can do here for the final fill. Plante fires. He's going to be on the nose. At least 6. Looks like it will be 6. That will put Plante at 130. 130 to Graffam's 116. I need to figure out where I went. Nope. Never mind. He does have 116. Graffam 116, Plante 130. That is confirmed. 4-game total for a 324 for Graffam. 4-game total of 348 for John Plante. 4-game total of 332 for Reid. 4-game total of 302 for Hebert. Excuse me. 3-game total all around. You know what I mean. That was the end of the 3rd game. We're going to move to the start of the 4th game now. And the E-Class will lead off. It's going to be Jonathan Reid on the right side and Bryan Hebert on the left side. Jonathan Reid, second best in headpins tonight, 17 for 30. He's on the headpin, adding to that total, dropping 6. Hebert is just off to the right of the headpin, dropping 5. Reid versus the 7-8-10-2. Hebert versus the 1-2-7-8-10. Reid will fire first for the mark. He'll play the wood and he'll get the spare. Spare for Reid, 10 after 1 and a ball, and Hebert just missing his target. Hebert's looking to reconcile 8 box, 9 box, or 10 box, and he'll take a 9. Reid 10 and a ball after 1. Hebert 9 after 1. Hebert getting ready to fire, or Reid getting ready to fire, excuse me. Reid's to the, he's not on the head pin, but the head pin does go. The rare case of not a head pin shot, but is a split, so that'll be a 7 fill for Reid, and Hebert is just off target on the 10 pin. Reid has a lumber yard in front of the 7-8-9. He'll play it, and he'll get a spare. He'll play the wood. He's a wood player. And Hebert is on the nose for the second ball, but leaves the 5 and the 8 for a 10 box. Third ball shot to conclude the second frame. Hebert will take a 10 box. So Hebert's at 19 after 2, and Reid is at 27 and a ball after 2. So real quick, we have fast action tonight, but we are at Lakeside Lanes tonight. Since 1959, the same age as Leda Lanes. Plenty of food options all around Lakeside if you come to visit the Massabesic Lake in Manchester, New Hampshire off of exit 1 and 101. That's a 6 drop for Reid and a 6 fill for Reid. He's on the head pin. Hebert not on the head pin. He drops 5. Reid for the spare shot. It was a hard one. He doesn't get it. Hebert, 4 horse on the left side in the 9. He's on it, and the 7 pin somehow comes out unharmed. Reid for an 8, 9, or 10 box on the 5, 10. He'll take an 8 box. And Hebert will take a 9. That should put Reid at 41. At least I think. Okay, apparently he had a 5 fill on that second spare, so I will correct that to sync up with the bowlers. At the moment, Reid is at 40 after 3, and Hebert's at 28 after 3. And Reid will drop 7, not on the head pin, but still a good mix. And Hebert will drop 8. Both bowlers. Oh, sorry. Reid will drop 8, and Hebert will drop 9. Neither bowler on the head pin. That's Jonathan Reid on the spare attempt, and doesn't quite convert. Hebert will get a spare, though. Reid working on a 10 box on the 10 pin. And Reid will take a 9 box. 49 after 4 for Jonathan Reid. And 38 in the ball for Bryan Hebert Jr. That's right, Bryan Hebert Jr. His father, Bryan Hebert Sr., still bowls. In fact, I bowl with both Bryan Heberts, the Sunday Night League at Lakeside Lanes. That's Jonathan Reid on the head pin for an 8 fill and a split. Hebert on the head pin for an 8 fill and a split. Reid trying to play something on the wood for the 6 and the 7, and he doesn't get much out of it. And Hebert on the 5-10, he sails through the small gap between the 5 and the 10 where there isn't wood. No mark for either bowler. Reid will play the 6-10 in the wood, and the 6 somehow will stay despite the ball being more direct on the 6. He'll take a 9 box. Hebert will take 10. Okay, so that should put Reid at 58 after 5 and Hebert at 56 after 5, and that appears to be correct. Again, I think, I don't know if I just scored Reid's second spare fill wrong initially, but 5 is what they got up on the board, so that's what I'm going with. Currently 390, 3.5 game total for Reid, 358, 3.5 game total for Hebert. John Hebert is down in the total by 32 and down in the game by 2. We'll say hello to our Class A bowlers next. That is John Plante. To the right of the head pin, he drops pins. That's about as much as I can say about that. And Graffam is not on the head pin either. He drops 6. John Plante for the spare bid, and he'll get it. It's a slow-moving one, but he will take the spare. Plante 10 in ball after 1. Graffam can't quite make the magic happen. He's left with a 1, the 7, and the 8. For 10 box, Graffam will take a 10 box. 10 after 1 for Graffam, 10 in a ball for Plante. And John Plante on the nose. He's dropped 8 so far. 8 fill. Both bowlers on headpins. Graffam with a split, 7 drop. So Plante had an 8 fill. But no second spare. Believe it or not. Graffam for a spare attempt. He'll take the 5 and the 9, leaving the 7. Plante will take a 10. Graffam will also take a 10. 20 after 2 for Graffam. 28 after 2 for Plante. And that's John Plante on the nose. Dropping 6, dropping 7. And Graffam is just off target off the headpin, but drops 7. We'll start with Plante for his spare bid. And he will get it. Late falling 7 pin equals a spare. Graffam is just off target. And that will be an 8 box for Graffam. Size up the score situation. 28 after 3 for Lewis Graffam. 38 in a ball after 3 for John Plante. John Plante at 38 in a ball. He's just off the left of the headpin. 1, 8, 10. It's a 7 fill. Graffam on the headpin. Wow, not much to show for. Look at that. 4, 5, 2, 8, 9. You got a little bit robbed on that one. It's John Plante, though, sparing it up, cleaning it up on the second ball. Graffam will make his darndest attempt on that bale of pins in the center, but he'll leave the 5 and the 9. But he'll clean up for a 10 box. It was great pinning by Graffam. Graffam's at 38 after 4. That is confirmed. And Plante is at 55 in a ball after 4. Plante is really starting to pull ahead in the fill total in particular. He's at 80 so far cumulatively, while Graffam is at 49. Speaking of fills, that's a 6 fill on the nose for Plante. Headpin shot and a split. And Graffam, that is technically not a split, but my goodness, that's on the nose. 4, 5, 8, 9, 10 for Graffam. No wood to help him. Plante is the 3, 6, 7, 10 with some wood around it. Plante will play a little bit too full on the 3, 6 pocket. Graffam will play the right side of the extended accordion, leaving the 5 and the 8 pins on the deck. No marks for either of our bowlers. John Plante will fire on the 7. He'll take the 7 for a 10 box, and Lewis Graffam will also take a 10 box. All right, and that is the end of the half for all of our bowlers here in the 4th. 48 after 5 for Graffam, 71 after 5 for Plante. That is confirmed. And then back in the E class, it's 58 after 5 for Reid and 56 after 5 for Hebert. 3.5 game total of 372 for Graffam. 3.5 game total of 419 for John Plante. So we're going to say hello once again after some couple of wayward pins and balls being cleared out of the gutter. Hebert again at 56 after 5. He's on the right, and Jonathan Reid on the left. 58 after 5. Neither bowlers are on marks. Hebert totaling 45 in fills. Reid totaling 64 in fills. Hebert has the higher per box fill average at 7.5, while Reid is averaging 6.4. Interesting juxtaposition there. So Bryan Hebert will lead off on lane 24 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire to start things out. He'll fire. He's on the head pin, and he'll drop 8. Thank you, pins, for finally getting it. And Jonathan Reid's on the nose, and he'll drop 7. Both bowlers on splits. 5, 3, 10 for Reid, and 7, 8 for Hebert. Hebert plays the wood, and oh my goodness. A weird deflection results in no mark because the 7 pin doesn't go. Jonathan Reid versus the 3, the 5, and the 10, and they go for a spare. Spare for Reid, 10 for Hebert. Reid's at 68 in the ball after 6. And Hebert's at 66 in the ball. No, it's just 66 after 6, excuse me. Hebert will start first. To the right of the head pin, dropping 7. His ball is getting a little bit more powerful now, or at least in terms of the impact. Reid filling a spare. And the 7-8, it's going to be a 5 fill for Reid. Not on the head pin. Hebert will chop out the head pin and nothing else. Reid now working on a spare. 1-3, 7-8, 10. He misses the 1-3 pocket, connects only with the 3, leaving the 1-7-10 high-low jack with wood. Hebert just misses to the left of the 2-pin. I'm going to zoom in on this because the 1-7-10 is always fun when it goes. So that's Reid for the 10-box attempt on the 1-7-10. Oh, and he misses to the right. That'll be an 8-box for Reid. And a 9-box for Hebert, I believe. 81-7 for Reid. That is confirmed. And 75 after 7 for Hebert. That is confirmed. With the scores the bowlers are maintaining down on the electronic scoreboard out of view. Hebert, meanwhile, on the head pin, he's dropping 8. Could be 9. It might be 10. But the pin, the last wood does not wrap around to pick up the last pin. So that's a head pin shot, no split for Hebert, and that's a head pin shot, no split for Reid. That's an 8-drop for Reid with the 5-8. Hebert versus the 3, and he'll steal it for a spare. Reid on the 5 and the 8. And the wood is not as generous as a ball down there. That's going to just zoom out of play. So Hebert with 2 marks so far. Reid with 3 marks so far. Jonathan Reid is 22 for 38 on head pins tonight. Hebert 11 for 38. And Reid is 22 for 38. Just waiting for a ball to be cleared before Jonathan Reid finishes his third attempt for a 10-box. We'll take a 10. 91-8 for Jonathan Reid. 85 in a ball for Hebert. This game is still competitive at this time. Yeah, here we go. And Hebert's to the left of the head pin. He takes a half Worcester at 2. 2 for the road, some takeout. And Reid having similar problems. Wild pitches for both of our bowlers. Well, not necessarily for Hebert. He just got a little bit unlucky with that half Worcester slightly off target of the head pin, but the remedial ball leaves all but the head pin on the deck. And Reid will just punch straight through. No mark for either bowler. Hebert for a 9 or a 10 box. He'll take a 10. Reid for a 6er through 10 box. And it looks like he'll take an 8, leaving the 2 and the 3 on the deck. Give you a little more time on the scoreboard here. So 99 after 9 for Reid. 97 after 9 for Hebert. Closing in on the 4th game with 1 box to go. Here's Bryan Hebert on the orange pin head pin. And he'll drop 7. And Reid is just off the head pin. Hebert with a spare leave, the 5-6-3. And he'll take the 5 and only the 5. No mark. Jonathan Reid is struggling to connect with his targets, but is what it is there. Hebert will take 9. Reid, meanwhile, will take 10. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with, in Class E, Reid will take a 109 to Hebert's 106. So Hebert will fall to Reid by 3 pins in the 4th game. 4-game total of 441 for Jonathan Reid and a 4-game total of 408 for Bryan Hebert. That is the current situation for Class E. We're going to say hello to Class A once more. It's Jonathan Plante on the left and Louis Graffam on the right. Louis Graffam to the just off the head pin. He gets by. Plante, similar story. No head pin shots for either of our bowlers. Graffam on the 1-2-5-9. 1-2-5-8-9, excuse me. He'll connect on the pocket, but leave the 5-9. 1-7-10-6 for Plante, and he'll misfire. Excuse me, 1-8-10-6. I'm bad at pin numbers, apparently. Lewis Graffam will take an 8 box. Plante on the 1-6-10. He'll take 9. 56 after 6 for Lewis Graffam, and 80 after 6 for John Plante. John Plante finding some opportunities here. Graffam, 21 for 36 on headpins with 10 splits. Plante, 14 for 36 on headpins with 8 splits. Lewis Graffam just to the right of the headpin, dropping 6. John Plante on the headpin, dropping 8. Graffam will go first on the 1, 2, 4, 10. We'll take 2 more out, leaving the 1 and the 10. No mark. Plante with the 5 and the 9 on the deck. There's a piece of wood just leaning in the gutter, but that's out of play. Plante will bean the 5 and leave the 9. No mark. Graffam, I believe that will be a 9. I will confirm. Nope, it will be an 8. 8 for Graffam. No, excuse me. Apparently it's a 9. Some indecision going on down there on the electronic scoreboard. So 90 for Plante, 65 for Lewis Graffam. Lewis Graffam needs to make something happen here. He's on the headpin. He drops 6. And Plante, he's on the headpin. Banana split, 4, 6, 7, 10. Splits and headpin shots for both our bowlers this time around. Graffam for a 6 drop for a spare conversion. He leaves the 3 and the 10. 7, 10, 4, 6 for John Plante. Banana split with some wood perpendicularly nearby the 4 and the 6 pins. John Plante on lane 23. He'll play the right side and he'll take 2 sticks and leave 2 sticks. Graffam will clean up for a 10 box. That was great pinning. Plante for the 4-7 for a 10 box. And I believe that will be 10. I will hold to see if that's going to be a foul or anything. I don't believe so. 108 for Plante and 75 and 8 for Graffam at this time. Currently, Plante is leading the charge in terms of fill totals. He's at 86, averaging 6.1 per. Graffam at 49 in total fills, averaging 7 per. That's a headpin shot spread eagle for Graffam. A 2-pin spread eagle at that. That's a 7 drop for Plante. And Graffam trying to convert for a spare. He can't quite do it. He leaves the 3, 6, 10 and the 9. And Plante on the triangle. He gets it for a spare. Graffam will take 6. And this game might be a bit of a defining runaway for the total. Plante is at 110 and a ball in the 9th. And Graffam is at 81 in the 9th. Lewis Graffam's new to the ACST this year. It's his rookie year, and he's starting in Class A. His first match was against me in Bolorama a couple of weeks ago. That's a 2 drop for Graffam. Neither bowlers have headpin shots. Plante had a 5 fill. 4 horsemen left side of the 9. Graffam does not convert for a spare. And Plante does not convert for a spare either. Graffam will take an 8 box to finish with an 89. And Plante, 8, 9, or 10 box. It will be a 9 box for 124 for John Plante. 4-game total of 472 for John Plante with that 124. 4-game total of 413 for Lewis Graffam. John Plante is starting to pull ahead in terms of the overall total by a significant margin. Up in the total by 59, winning the 4th game by 35. And the 4th game, Jonathan Reid is at 441 to Bryan Hebert's 408. Reid up in the total by 33. Currently 6 points for Reid, 2 points for Hebert, and currently 8 points for Plante and 0 points for Graffam as of right now. That's the current point distribution before we start talking about the 5th and final game, which we are just now entering. So the 5th and final game will determine. Obviously, you can get 2 points for the game, but you can also get 4 additional points if you can sway the total back in your favor. So, Reid, no headpin. And Hebert, no head pin. Reid for a spare conversion. And he'll take all but 2 pins out. And Hebert's off target by just a hair. Both bowlers looking at 8, 9, or 10 boxes. Reid is 22 for 41 on head pins tonight. Hebert 12 for 41 on head pins tonight. Reid will take a 9. And Hebert will take an 8. Appreciate you watching this Atlantic Campus Singles Tour match. I'm Steve Kelly on the call and on the microphone, running the unofficial scoreboard you see on the stream. It's great to have you along. I hope you're enjoying this broadcast. This doubleheader action, preempting the Friday Night Pro League. Check that out on Candlepin Bowling Network later on tonight. That will be commentated by Paul Grant and Alex Patton in his technical and commentary debut for the Friday Night Pro League specifically. So check them out. Go easy on them. I wish them the best of luck for doing all the scorekeeping and all the commentating. I know it's not nearly as easy of a job as it looks. So I believe it'll be Alex Patton's first time. So cheer him on just as much as you cheer on the bowlers. No marks for either of our bowlers. It's an 8 box for Reid and a 5 box for Hebert. And currently, in terms of the head pins and splits, Reid is 22 for 42. Hebert is at 12 for 42. Reid has been taking in 69 in terms of fills, averaging 6.3 per fill. Hebert's at 47 in fill totals, averaging 6.7. Neither bowlers on the head pin again. Spare leaves abound. Hebert has the better one, the 1-5-8-9. Reid tries to clean up but leaves the 10 pin. And Hebert tries to get a pretty spare, but he leaves the 9. Both bowlers looking at 9s or 10s now. Here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Reid will just barely stay on for a 10. And Hebert will also take a 10. $27 after 3 for Reid and 23 after 3 for Hebert. Hey, and we got a bit of interesting pin setter incident going on down there, so let's switch to B-roll. So yes, we're at Lakeside Lanes again, just continuing that lecture. Lakeside Lanes is just as old as Legal Lanes, established in 1959. It only has 24 lanes, but this place gets real busy. All wood approaches, all wood lanes, very well maintained. They use CompuScore for the scoring software, manual scoring, the classic CompuScore, the old MS-DOS look. There's the 25th lane for parties, birthday parties, and great well-stocked bar maintained by Shane Lipke here at Lakeside Lanes. Jonathan Reid's off the head pin, and Bryan Hebert's also not on the head pin, either of our bowlers, long story short. Reid for the spare bid. He gets by. Hebert for the spare bid. He's on the 1-3 pocket, but hits it a little bit light. He connects, but leaves the 2 and the 10. Reid for a 10 box, 6 box minimum. And it looks like it will be an 8 for Reid. Hebert, meanwhile, 8, 9, or 10 box, 2 in the 10. We'll take a 10. 33 after 4 for Hebert, 35 after 4 for Reid. Just by a little bit. Yeah, 106, 109, yeah. And Hebert's just off to the left of the head pin. I mean, Reid that is, excuse me. Hebert now, he's just a little bit off the left of the head pin as well. Dropping 7, though. Better leave. Hebert's got the 3, 6, 10. Reid's got the 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, 10. Reid's on the nose, and he'll take it for a spare. Hebert on the 3, 6, 10. He's just off the 3. He'll take the 6 and the 10. So Reid will take a spare, and Hebert will be cleaning up for a 10 box on the 3 pin. He'll fire, and he's just off. He's at 42 after 5. That'll be the end of the half. Reid sits at 45 and a ball after 5, and Hebert's at 42 after 5. That's the end of the first half of this match tonight. Graffam Plante will now be getting ready to start things out here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour in this Class A and E doubleheader match at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. It's great to have you along, as always. I am Steve Kelly on the call and on the mic. It's great to have you along. Everyone around here definitely appreciates you watching online if you can't be here physically, and there's a lot of people here physically watching tonight. And that's John Plante on the spread eagle, a 4 drop on the head pin. Graffam dropping 7 despite not being on the head pin. So that's John Plante for the eagle. He chooses the 3-6 pocket, leaves the 2-4-7. And that's Louis Graffam on the 1-2-4 for a spare, and he gets it. Plante for a 10 box, 7 box minimum. And he'll get by for a 9. 10 and a ball for Graffam, 9 after 1 for Plante. So again, if you want to check out Lakeside Lanes, it's a great bowling alley off of 101 on exit 1. Shorter drive than Exeter Lanes if you're coming up from Nashua, for sure. It's on that stretch of 101 where you can get to 3 different bowling alleys. You get to Lakeside Lanes or Portsmouth Bowlerama or Exeter Lanes. If you just keep going down the line, depends on which bowling alley you want. It's a headpin shot for John Plante. Almost converts for a spare, but can't quite get it. Graffam, that was a 2-fill on his spare. It was a wild pitch, and the second ball isn't much better. And Plante will take a 10. Oops. If I could put 10 in the right spot. There we go. And Graffam will put an 8. We'll take 8. Louis Graffam, 23 for 42 on headpins tonight. Plante is 19 for 42. And Plante is doing a better job on mark fills, taking a 91 to Graffam's 51. And that is John Plante, not in the headpin, but with a split eventually because the headpin fell after some time. Graffam is still trying to find the headpin. Plante is on the 7-9-4. He'll play it, but he'll leave the 9. Graffam's on the nose, and he'll take a spare. That was a nice shot by Louis Graffam as a recovery. That puts Louis Graffam at 30 and a ball after 3, and Plante will miss for a 9. 28 after 3 for Plante. 30 and a ball for Graffam. In case you missed it, Bryan Hebert's at 42 after 5, and Jonathan Reid is at 45 and a ball after 5. And we have some more lane maintenance to take care of, so we're going to pause for that, wait for that to settle itself out. So again, I told you once, I'll tell you multiple times, we're at Lakeside Lanes. Multiple times voted WMUR Viewers' Choice Best Bowling Alley 4 times in a row. And again, if you're looking for some Candlepin action and you want to spin the wheel on social media or video apps, we got you covered. We're on Facebook, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube. Multiple YouTube channels. Let's start with Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube and Candlepin Corner on YouTube, and then let's go to TikTok at Candlepin Bowling. The Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, of course, on Facebook. And I think we're still waiting on the lane maintenance. Okay. And more stuff to check out on YouTube in particular, such as Alley Chat and Wolfman12395. I know it's kind of a wacky username, but regularly posted awesome classic Candlepin shows from like the WNDS TV 50 era, as well as Channel 5 or the Comcast, the short-lived Comcast channel, and all kinds of stuff from all sorts of decades. Anyways, that's John Plante. Louis Graffam with a 2-fill. Not on the headpin, unfortunately. John Plante, similar troubles, but drops 6. And he'll chop out one of the 4 horsemen. And Graffam will try to clean up for a spare, but can't quite complete the action. John Plante will chop out the second of the 4 horsemen for an 8 box. And Graffam will take 7 all the while. 39 after 4. No, excuse me. Apparently that was a 5 for Graffam. I must have missed a foul. I'm just looking up at the screen. 37 after 4 for Graffam. 36 after 4 for John Plante. Headpin shot and a split for John Plante and a 9 drop for Graffam. Plante's looking at the 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Eagle minus the 10, and will it go? Will it be a spare? It almost looked like it was about to go, but the wood stopped short of taking the 4 and the 7. Louis Graffam versus the 7 pin, and it will go. Louis Graffam will take a spare. John Plante, meanwhile, will take a 10. 46 after 5 for John Plante, 47 and a ball for Lewis Graffam. A 3-mark half for Lewis Graffam in particular. So that's the end of the first half for all of our bowlers tonight in this match. We're going to say hello one more time to the E-Class one last time. Jonathan Reid and Bryan Hebert. That's Bryan Hebert on the right and Jonathan Reid on the left. We're having a fantastic time at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. In this doubleheader action, Class A and E. That's Bryan Hebert on the head pin with a split. 7-drop. It's the 5-9-10. Jonathan Reid, who's on a spare. He's on the nose. It looks like it's going to be a 6-fill and a split for Mr. Jonathan Reid. Hebert will try to kick it over for a spare. He can't quite do it. He leaves the 10-pin. Jonathan Reid, 5-6-3-7 for a spare shot. He'll play it, and will it go? He almost gets it. The 5-pin stays unexpectedly. And Hebert will take a 9. Jonathan Reid, meanwhile, on the 5-pin, single pin for a 10 box. He'll take a 10. He'll take a 9 as well. Bryan Hebert totaling 47 in fills tonight. Jonathan Reid totaling 75 in fills tonight. That is almost the total's worth of a difference, to put things in perspective a little bit in terms of where you can find extra pins to overtake the total. This Bryan Hebert on the head pin with a 6-drop. No split left side accordion. Reid is just off the head pin, but gets a 7-drop eventually, the 1-7-10. High-low jack with a little bit of wood in between it all. Hebert versus the 7-8-4-5. He'll not get it, and Reid will also not get it. No marks for either bowler. Hebert will clean up. I believe that's going to be a 9, if I'm not mistaken. Nope, it's an 8. That's why I didn't make any comment. I was checking to make sure if he fouled or not. It's going to be an 8. Going to be an 8 box for both our bowlers, actually. So 68 after 7 for Reid, 59 after 7 for Hebert. That is confirmed. Bryan Hebert will start out on lane 24. He's on the head pin a little bit too full. 4-drop spread eagle. Right through the center. Reid is to the right of the head pin but gets a decent mix. Drops 5. Hebert versus the eagle. He tries to play the left side, only takes out the 4. Reid versus the 1-2-7-8-10. Fires. He looks like it's going to be on it. He is on it, but he leaves the 8. Hebert versus the 7-10-2-3-6. He'll take 2 more off of the road for a 7 box. Disappointing 7. He did the best he could to clean it up. Reid will take a 10. Jonathan Reid, that is. 78 and 8 for Reid. 66 and 8 for Hebert. So we're getting towards the end of the 5th and final game here. So before we go, of course, I want to say a couple of things, just as we always do. Our special thanks to Danny Finn, our ACST League Commissioner, for keeping us all squared away on everything and keeping us bowlers on schedule and on task for getting matches completed and whatnot, as well as Micah Imperato for all the stats and numbers that I often call upon for all kinds of analysis or just ideas, all that kinds of stuff. I always appreciate that, Micah. No mark for Bryan Hebert. He's left with a 4. Reid for his shot, and he's a little off target, but it looks like he's going to get a decent steal out of it. He leaves the 2. Hebert for a 10 box. He'll take a 10. And Reid for the 10 box. He'll take 9. 87 and 9 for Reid. 76 and 9 for Hebert. So for Class A, Rich Lamone is our treasurer, and for Class E, Maurice Perry is the treasurer. Always thank them as well because they're handling all the financials and whatnot. Hebert's on the head pin, drops 6. And Reid to the right of the head pin drops 6 as well. Hebert versus a cluster of pins, the 2-4-7-8 with some wood across the 2. And he won't play the wood, but he takes everything but the 4-pin, unfortunately. 4-pin was even touched, but just didn't quite hit it directly enough. Reid on the 1-4-7-9, and everything falls but the 9. No mark for either bowler. Hebert will conclude with a 10 box. That will put him at 86 and 10. And Reid, meanwhile, will get deflected for a 9. He'll get a 96 in the 10th. That will be the end of the 5th game for our Class E bowlers. And it looks like Bryan Hebert will be only taking 2 points, and Reid will be taking 12 points. 494 5-game total for Bryan Hebert and a 537 5-game total for Jonathan Reid. Excellent bowling for Jonathan Reid in the E-Class in his rookie year, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll say hello once again, of course, to our A-Class bowlers. That's Louis Graffam on the right. He's on the nose. And that's a 6-pin fill for Louis Graffam. Just putting that in. John Plante is to the left of the head pin. Louis Graffam leaves the 6 and the 10 on the deck. No spare shot. John Plante versus the half Worcester plus DLC. The 2, the 8, and the 5 got taken out and nothing else. And he's right on it, but he leaves the 4, 6, 7, 10 banana split on the deck. And Graffam will take a 10 box. Plante will nearly convert the banana split, but he'll take a 9 for 55 in 6, while Graffam will finish at 63 in 6. 25 for 46 for Graffam for head pins tonight. 20 for 46 for Plante for head pins tonight. Graffam, 6 drop on the head pin. And Plante, to the right of the head pin, drops 5. 5 drop for both our bowlers, actually. Graffam will take 3 more out in the back corner, leaving the 5 and the 3. Plante is looking at the 1, 2, 4, 7, 8 for a spare opportunity. Plante for a spare shot. A little bit too full, and the mix doesn't happen. It'll be a 9 box for Graffam. Plante for an 8, 9, or 10 box. And it will be a 10 box for Plante. That will be 72 after 7 for Louis Graffam and 65 after 7 for John Plante. John Plante totaling 91 in fills tonight on marks, while Louis Graffam's been totaling 59 in fills. Plante with a higher per box fill average of 6.1 versus Graffam's 5.9 per box fill average. Plante is on the head pin this time with an ugly split and a 4 drop, if you can believe that. Graffam gets by. No mark. Plante on the 7, 8, 10, 4, 6, 3. He sails through the center. Already got those pins. Graffam for a 7, 8, 9, or 10. He'll miss for a 7. 7 for Graffam. Plante will clean up for a 10 box. He wishes the second was. He'll wish the third was the second. Missed the second, get the third. Yada yada yada. Graffam currently at 79 and 8, and Plante at 75 and 8. That's where we stand. Graffam yet to find a strike tonight. He's the only bowler who hasn't done it. Would you believe an A-class bowler is the one who hasn't found a strike yet? Graffam to the left of the head pin. Takes a few pins out. Plante is on the nose, but almost a little bit too full. Drops 7, but it's an ugly split. Graffam versus a ton of pins on the deck. He's on the head pin, but leaves the 5, 6, 10. Plante is looking at the 4, 6, 2 for a spare bid. And Plante will play the 2 and the 4, but the wrong direction. No mark for either bowler. Louis Graffam will take 8. John Plante, 9 or 10 box for the 6 pin left on the deck. And he'll take a 10 for 85 and 9 for John Plante, and 87 and 9 for Louis Graffam. 1 box to go here. So I also thank the staff at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Bobby Greco and Tim Lipke and Shane Lipke, all y'all. You guys are always fantastic and accommodating. Always appreciate you guys. Always thank you for watching as well. Wouldn't do this without you, and appreciate your interest in Candlepin bowling. Graffam with a left side half Worcester. No head pin shot. Plante with the left side triangle that he's been getting, and he's been converting for a spare quite frequently tonight, so we'll see if he can continue that stretch. Graffam completing the trip to Worcester on the opposite side for a 4 so far, and there's Plante with that triangle conversion, just as expected. And oh my goodness, Graffam gets probably the worst possible outcome of half Worcester trips or full Worcester trips. That's a 5 conclusion for Lewis Graffam. 5-box conclusion for 92. My goodness. John Plante for the final fill. It's just gravy at this point. He'll take 8 for 103. That is confirmed. Rough game for both of our A-class bowlers here at the end. So that will be it. 5-game total of 505 for Graffam, falling to Plante's 575 by 70 for the total. So that's all. That's it for all of the games tonight. So let's just take a quick look at the final stats tonight. So we are all done in terms of... Sorry, I'll just hide that. We're all done in terms of the game. The match is complete. So John Plante will actually completely shut Lewis Graffam out, 14-0, taking all 5 games and the total. And Jonathan Reid will take 12 off of Bryan Hebert. Hebert will take 2 points from the first game, but from the second game, that is. And that really will do it. Interesting point spreads, rather large point differentials tonight. But that will just about do it for us at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. And for Lewis Graffam, John Plante, Jonathan Reid, and Bryan Hebert, this has been the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. We're going to be signing off tonight. And before we go, just letting you know, also we have plenty of other socials, such as Charlie Collins on TikTok, Tony Levesque on YouTube. There's podcasts such as Ripping the Rack and the Approach. And there's also Candlepins for Cancer. Go to candlepinsforcancer.com to sign up for qualifying roll-offs or to donate. Awesome cause. If you want to just donate and skip the bowling, you can also do that. There's the Any Doubles coming up, and that will be in Scarborough, Maine at the Big 20 Bowling Center. And again, real quick, I won't dwell on this too long. I am on the mass holes for the 2024 World Invitational Candlepin Championship. I'm selling some raffle tickets. If you are interested, check out this slide. You can always pause the video if you need to. My Venmo is at Skelly Skelly. If you want 1 ticket, it's $5, 3 tickets for $10, 5 tickets for $20. Tons of drawings on November the 4th during the Worlds at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. I'll just need you to message me just some info so I can physically write on the card so I can submit your raffle ticket entry, and I would greatly appreciate that. And of course, folks, if you think you can bowl better than any of the bowlers you saw tonight, check out candlepin.org and click Go Bowling to find your nearest center. Check out that map, including in Albany, New York. Not all centers are shown on the map, and there's probably even more than what's listed here, but check it out. Candlepin bowling is a fun time. Anyways, I'm Steve Kelly, and for everyone here tonight in Class A and E at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, we'll see you next time. Have a great one, everybody.